Just before we start, I'd like a bit of audience participation. I want to finish this on time, so if all of you could remind me when it's 9:15, 9:30, 9:45 and 9:55. So we'll go like this. Michael, it is 9:15. Michael, it is 9:30. Michael, it is 9:45. Michael, it is 9:55. Will you all able or be able to do that?
We will try.
Thank you very much. Because there's a certain gentleman here and other people as well who have a presentation at 10 o'clock after this, and I don't want to take any of their precious time. Also, if I don't thank a few people before we start, I won't get time to thank them at the end. So, Marcia, Richard, and all the team, if you could all stand up and show your appreciation by a big round of applause for all the work and effort that they have put in over many, many months to organise this. So, could you all stand up together? Okay. Michael O'Shea is my name, and I'm from Ireland. Marcia asked me to do this last year, and immediately I said yes. But she said, I'm going to set you a challenge. I want you to speak about your life as a stammerer and what you've done to be where you are now with your verbal communication. I don't really focus on speech. I focus on the whole holistic self. How we communicate as human beings. Eye contact, hand gestures, all of that stuff. And I've studied very closely people who do presentations for a living. The power of the pause. The power of eye contact. The power of bringing your audience in. The power of knowing the most important people in the room are the audience. It's not about me. So we start. I was born in 1955. My parents, Patrick, he was called Pat for short. My mother was Agnes, Aggie for short. Very humble people. We weren't rich, we lived in a rural area. I had a fantastic upbringing, lived in a small community of people where we all helped and supported each other. In Ireland in 1959, children started school at 4. Infant school and first infants. It is different now, they start school at 5. The parish school that I went to, for the first infants and up to first class, the boys and girls were mixed. It was run by a Catholic order of nuns. Not like now, the children weren't introduced to their teachers before they started school. The school was about 2 miles, 3 kilometres away from our home. We didn't have a car, so I walked to school every morning. It's not like it is now, where the kids are dropped at school. They're dropped everywhere else too. That wasn't the Ireland of 1959. When I started school, my teacher was a nun. I'd never seen a nun in my life. This black being draped in black with only white across her forehead. I was frightened. When the nun spoke to my mother at the door, I ran out the back door. I'd done this on Monday. When the opportunity arose, I'd done it on Tuesday. And when the opportunity arose, I'd done it on Wednesday. Wednesday was different. Wednesday, the head nun was waiting at the back door. She grabbed me, and her classroom was across at the other side of the playground. But to get there, you had to go walk across the path. To this day, I can visualize the path, white railings, the hedge. It was autumn, was starting to lose its leaves. You went through an arch of ivy. The ivy was also starting to lose its leaves. That's how bright that picture is. To make a long story short, she brought me to her classroom, and in front of her class, which was the senior class, she bet me with a cane. Nobody had ever hit me. Nobody. After that, for 3 months, I never spoke. When I did speak, I stuttered. Nobody knew what stuttering was then. Nobody had really put a label on it in Ireland. And so I was brought to the local doctor. Speech therapy in Ireland was in its infancy. I think at that time there was only 2 speech therapists in Ireland. Later on, there became 3. So I started to stutter. My sister's name was Mary. And how smart and how clever we people are who are challenged by stammering. How clever and how we cope. And I started to cope very, very early in life. At the age of 4.5, because I couldn't say her name, Harry, and that's exactly how I used to say it. I changed it to Harry. It became her pet name. For the rest of her life. And she walked in that door now, and I said, Harry, will you come up on stage with me? She would just walk straight up, because it was so natural. At the age of, I don't want to go through school because it takes too long. But to compound the fact that I get the beating of the nun, which was the trigger for my stammering. They're doing a lot of research into DNA at the moment. When that research is compiled, it's going to blow the stammering world apart with their findings. Well, at the age of 9, I had very good teachers in school, but unfortunately, the principal of my national school was a bit of a lunatic. He got pleasure from pain. I was in 3rd class. I was 8 or 9. One day our teacher was sick, and the only thing I knew about our principal was that he shouted, and he was a very angry man. So when she wasn't in, there was no such thing then as substitute teachers. There just wasn't enough teachers in Ireland at the time. We were only a free state for about maybe 25 or 30 years at the time. So everything was starting to build. But we ended up in his class. And on the second day in his class, it was a damp, miserable November morning, lashing rain outside, and he wasn't in the best of humour. And at about 11 o'clock, he asked me a question. And I stood up to say it, trembling. And I couldn't say the word. I blocked, and I blocked, and I blocked. Spit it out! Spit it out! And I couldn't say that word if my life depended on it. He lost his temper. Hold out your hand, he said. And I held out my left hand. And I could sense the viciousness in his voice that I was going to suffer pain. So what happened when he drew back the stick? I drew in my hand to avoid pain. And he got twice as mad. And with that, he cleverly turned the flat part of the stick on its edge, held my hand with his hand across here, and just lashed down. Drew blood to the soft part of my hand here. And at that age, 8 or 9, I knew instinctively, that this was the first time in my life I had been attacked by an adult because of how I spoke. Because of how I spoke.
It is a little bit after 9:15, Michael.
Okay, you should have told me it was 9:15. We need to move on. Okay, so from therapy I spent serious time and serious money. But that message is important. That message of the trigger is important to the whole story. Maybe you're so engrossed in the story, you've all lost track of time. So when I introduced myself in my teens, it was like this. Michael O'Shea is my name. I can bring that back like that. Why can I bring it back? Because I learned it. I learned how to speak that way. When I started to work, one of my goals was to get as much help as I possibly could regarding my speech. Spent serious time, serious money. At the age of 35, I stopped because I said, all of those people were only taking my money and they saw me as a soft touch. That's how I felt. It's all about feelings, how you feel about this thing. I went to quacks. Anybody that I thought would give me relief from the pain. David spoke about hurt. With me, it went much deeper. During those years, I was very good at athlete, or a very good athlete, and sports, very, very good. My specialties were 1,500 metres, 3,000 and 5,000. At under 14, 15 and 16, I was national champion in all three grades. Generally, we have evening athletics meetings in Ireland in the summer because we didn't have stadiums and we didn't have lights. But one Wednesday evening, I was taking part in the meet and I was running 1,500 and 3,000. And the three people who represented Ireland in those grades at the time were in the race. I came in first in both races, 2.1 seconds ahead in the first one, 1.9 seconds ahead in the second one. And the selectors for the national team started to notice. Also at that time, people in Ireland didn't have a lot of money. University education was something few had. And I was passing by the coaches and the Irish selectors. And I heard one of them saying, we're going to put Michael in for a scholarship to Villanova University in America. Now, remember, I only overheard the conversation. So my coach was told. I hadn't walked 3 meters or 3 yards beyond that desk, and I knew I would never go to Villanova. And I put all the processes in place to make sure I wouldn't go. Why was that? I was going through my mind, how would I cope in America? I can't cope in my own country because of my challenge with stammering. How would I cope in America? So because of how clever we are, I immediately put him in the process to make sure I wouldn't go to America. Started to slack off in training. Started to, on the last bend of the 1,500 metres, knowing I had the race in my pocket, making sure on the back straight I would lose. Because I'm involved with the stammering community and with a lot of adults with stammer, people have told me similar stories, being on the 18th hole of a golf course, 3 strokes in front, and making sure over the next 2 holes they would lose. It wasn't that they didn't want to win, it was the fear of making a speech in the clubhouse to thank the sponsors. That was the reason. And sometimes it was big prize money, sometimes it was a lot of prestige. That's how stammering can rule your life. Regarding myself, it held me in a voice-like grip that I can't explain, but you understand. I need to know when it's 9:30. So, I lived that life. Left school early, had the capability of going to university and everything like that. My education would have to wait until later in life. In 1983, my grandmother, who I loved dearly, passed away. And we talk about pain and hurt of stammering. I was her eldest grandchild. I'm a Catholic and a Christian. I'm very proud to be one. Funerals in Ireland are very precious. And here I was, I could not even say a prayer at my grandmother's removal or funeral. That pain and that memory stays with me to this day. After her funeral, I generally go on walks. I walk a lot. Because when you're walking, you figure things out. You're on your own. I'm aware of the birds that I'm at the sea. I'm aware of the waves. Very aware. And awareness is something I learned through stammering, visualization, all of this stuff that we talk about later on. But I became aware that if nature takes its course, I would lose both of my parents before I died. And people say about a tipping point in stammering. I knew that the pain would be twice as bad, and I wasn't looking forward to it. And there was no way of avoiding it. So I started to go and search again to find somebody who can help me with my speech. I had a mantra, and I want you to ask yourselves, have you something similar you do before you go to bed at night? Before you get up in the morning? Mine was, please God, help me to speak as best I can tomorrow, before I went to sleep. Just imagine the message that I was putting in my subconscious. When I got up the next morning and put my 2 feet on the floor, please God, help me to control my speech as best I can. Every day since I can remember. So that was a message. I was looking for an outside source even to help me. So we need to move on. But that was the mindset and mentality I had developed. I learned my way into stammering. I learned my way into it. And I needed to learn my way out of it. But I needed the right knowledge, the right tools, the right techniques, and above all, the right support from the right people. I needed to be inclusive in where I needed to go. I needed to tell people what I wanted to do. And I needed to tell people how important they were to get me to where I wanted to go. At the age of 35, I went home and I told my wife, this is it, I'm not paying any more money for therapy or practice. Funny story, because it's a bit serious. I went to Birmingham. I'm in the construction business. And every year, or every 2 years, I needed to go to either Germany or the UK to build exhibitions, to see what was happening in the construction industry. But everywhere I went, I searched the papers of that area to see was there somebody there who could help me or give me advice regarding my speech. And I saw an advert in the Birmingham Echo or something that may not be the exact name of the paper. There was a lady advertising that she could help with anxiety and stress. And I went. And to make a long story short, she welcomed me in. Now, just before I start this, I have to tell you how I coped in the real world. Pen and paper. If I left the house with a pen and paper and I realised I didn't have them, you have no idea. Maybe you have. Maybe you do the same thing yourselves, or you did. I thought I had left a part of me at home. And the anxiety levels rose up until I found a shop that I could get the pen and paper. So I was very good at organising. If I wanted a taxi, I had a piece of paper, I gave it to the taxi driver. Out of the taxi, name and number of the street. I'd hand it to a person on the street, acting as if I was mute. As if I was mute.
It's 9:30.
9:30. We need to move on. But this part of the story is important, and I'll speed it up. Went to this lady, she opened the door, draped in a white gown. She welcomed me in. I had to note who I was, what I wanted, where I was from. She welcomed me into her house and we went to her living room. There was a doctor's couch. All around the couch were candles, lavender. There was a white sheet over the couch. She put me on a white sheet. And all around the room were palms. Palms. So she ran the palms over me. I lay down, relaxed state. Close your eyes, Michael, she said. She put the palms over me. The stammering will leave, Michael, was an answer. The stammering will leave, Michael. The stammering will leave, Michael. The stammering will leave, Michael. I paid her £100. The only thing I got out of that exercise was I will never forget the smell of lavender. But that's what I done. So at 35 I went home. And I told Monica I will live with this for the rest of my life because I could see no way out. Now to speed it up because I need to, because somebody else has to come on in a quarter of an hour. A friend of mine rang me one day. He lived about 40 kilometres from our home. I met him twice through a newspaper article about stammering. He rang me a Sunday evening, about 7 o'clock. And I could not believe how he spoke. I could not believe how happy he sounded. Would I come to meet him, he said. Anybody who knows Ireland, I live in Waterford, he lives in Kilkenny, about 40 kilometres away. We had no motorways in Ireland then. It's only about a half-hour journey from my home now. I said I'd be there in an hour. And I observed him in a bar that I would not go into in case I had to ever ask for a drink. Because socially, I was an unmitigated disaster without the pen and paper. I could not order a drink. And in Ireland, drinking is a big part of our social culture. We're not all alcoholics, but it's a big part of our social culture. But to make a long story short, I couldn't believe how he spoke. I couldn't believe the confidence he had in himself. Now, he still stuttered. But there was something different. He was using those tools and techniques. He was resisting time pressure. He was doing stuff that I had heard of before, but wasn't explained very well. The reasons we do it. There's reasons we do things. There's reasons that we have to change. So I observed that man quite closely for 9 months. He had done, maybe some of you had heard of it, the McGuire program. After 9 months, I made up my mind, right, I will do this. I told Monica, this is going to be the last throw of the dice. And I was the most skeptical person because of the experiences of the past that had ever done that program. So fast-track this, I done it. They taught me tools and techniques. And over the next 2 years, I became very competent using those tools and techniques. Very competent. At the end of year 2, I became what I call a very good McGuire technique. And what I'm doing now is part of the technique. They taught me the reasons for resistant time pressure. They taught me the reasons for the power of the pause. They taught me the reasons why it was so important for people who were challenged by stammering to formulate what they wanted to say. They taught me the reasons for why it was so important to stay out of the cycle of panic. I never heard that stuff before. Not explained, yet I've heard the terms. With voluntary sliding, I became a master at it. On the McGuire program now, they call it deliberate disfluency. The reason for it is exactly the same as voluntary sliding. The reasons that Dave McGuire changed it was he likes to be a bit different, but it's the same thing. At the end of year 2, I became stuck. I wasn't moving forward, I wasn't moving back. I was following everything I was told to do. And when I wanted more information to bring me a bit further, because I was communicating well using the technique, I was very good in the McGuire technique. So basically what happened, I learned my way into that technique. Now, I have 3 neural pathways for speaking. The way I learned my way into stammering, the way I learned my way into technique, and the way I learned my way into how I speak now. I would say 98% of the time, stammering is not a problem, as in physical blocks and everything that went on in the past. Am I cured of the physical struggle of stammering? No, I'm not. And we don't have time to go into neurons being fused in the brain and all that stuff. We just don't have time. But 2% is what I allow myself to be imperfect. I allow myself that to be not perfect. All the people I've spoken to all over the world from various cultures, I've never met somebody who is 100% fluent. You know that great word I see out there, fluent, but we don't know what it is, because for a lot of people, they've never achieved it. No human being has achieved it, because we're not hot-wired or hard-wired to be perfect. It's hard to be perfect 24/7. Very, very hard. So, moving this on again. In 2007 or 2006, I started the research on the book, What I Call My Sister Harry. That's the title. I interviewed over 600 people who were challenged by stammering, not only from Ireland, but from many countries and cultures around the world. I was amazed by the personal stories that they told me that were so close to my own. People who were 30 plus would speak about the triggers that they could identify now as adults in their childhood that triggered their stammering. People who are 18 and 19 who are too immature in life to express that maybe the trigger for their stammering was something that happened in the home. Something that happened within the family. But as they grew older, they started to express it. So what I'm talking about is triggers. What I'm asking you, can you identify your trigger? Maybe you can. Maybe you can't. In 2007, October 2007, we also started the National Stammering Awareness Day in Ireland. It was also the launch of the book that evening. All the proceeds from why I called my sister Harry, they go back into stammering awareness in my own country, and also to people, young parents who have a young child who don't have the money to get their child assessed in private therapy. Right now there's 3 years of a waiting list for a child to be assessed in my country. Crazy stuff. The National Stammering Awareness Day was conceived in 2006. But I needed help, I needed support, and I didn't want a speech therapist or a speech pathologist as a partner in the project who was not challenged by stammering. At that time there was only 2 people in Ireland who were speech therapists or pathologists who were challenged by stammering. One of them was a complete no-no, didn't have the charisma, wouldn't have the patience or the job, and didn't have the empathy. But the other one had, and he jumped at the chance. So in 2007, the National Stammering Awareness Day was started in Ireland, which brought all of the stammering community in Ireland from one place to one place every year, just to talk about stammering. One thing about the book is, since it was launched, it is now in its 26,000 copies. Was the last statement I had from the publishers worldwide. 26,000. And I would say that if you take on average that 3 people would read the book that somebody bought, if it's exchanged or something, add up the math yourself. We got a lot of help and support with that book. It started off in longhand, 776 pages, but it had to be more concise, and now it's down to 240 something. One of the people that helped us with the book was a lady called Nicola Beresford, who was in communications. She works in radio and TV. She rang me one day and she said, "Michael, there's a chapter missing out of the book." And she said, "I can't put my finger on it." She said, "Can you look through it again?" And I looked through it, and I looked through it, and I looked through it, and I wasn't able to find it. About a week later, she rang my wife Monica and asked her to meet her for coffee. And Nicola told her, "Your story, Monica, is missing out of the book." When we learn therapy, when we get better, when we communicate with the other world, with the world outside that we never communicated with, it not only affects ourselves, it affects those who are close to us as well. So in a few moments, I'm going to ask my wife to read her passage that she wrote. Because for all of us in here, it's important that we realise that there is an emotional connection with every person on the face of this earth who is challenged by stammering. And every human being who starts to talk stuttered. Mama, 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 da, is how we all started to speak. So I'll invite my wife Monica now to read out her passage.
Okay, I call this chapter The Day I Became Redundant. October 99 was the start of my redundancy, only I wasn't aware of it at the time. It did not happen overnight, it was a gradual process, but at the time I found it very hard to come to terms with, and it took me quite a while to grasp that I was no longer needed in my husband's speaking life, and that in fact it was a positive thing. I have been happily married to Michael for more than 30 years. His stammer never made a difference. It was only a small part of the person I knew, and it never was an issue for me. Early in our relationship, I slipped naturally into the role of Michael's speaking voice. This role intensified when we got married and Michael became self-employed. I made all the phone calls, I ordered all the timber or whatever other materials were needed for the business. When we went out for a meal or away on holidays, I was the one who did all the ordering or the bookings. To be honest, I never really thought about the fact that I was doing all of this. It was done unconsciously, and I didn't realise that in the outside world I was talking for both of us. When our sons Gary and Alan came along and started school and became involved in sport, I was the ones who went to meet their teacher or stand on the sidelines, cheering them on because Michael was always busy. He was meeting other clients, or he was doing invoices or getting quotes out, or so I thought. I have since discovered that this was not always the truth, and many times he wanted to go to all of these things with me, but he felt his stammer held him back. He thought he was protecting us, his family, from the shame and embarrassment that he always saw in other people's faces whenever he tried to speak. Of course, he never told me or any of this at the time. If he had, we could have told him that his stammer could never have let us down. We loved him, and the way he spoke made no difference to us. Michael is a very loving husband and father, and he has always put his family before himself. Over the years, he tried many different methods to control his stammer. Some worked for a few weeks, but then he would go back to his normal self. In October 1999, he went on the Maguire program, and while I say it was the start of my redundancy, it was also one of the best things to happen to Michael and to us as a family. When he came home from that first course, I noticed a change in him immediately. He seemed to be more confident in himself, and over the coming weeks I noted that I wasn't being asked to make phone calls anymore. He was making the calls himself. Actually, we noticed over the next few months that he was getting harder and harder to use the phone. Gary was 18 and Alan was 15. Being typical teenagers, they often needed to use the phone, but they couldn't get near it because his dad was tying up the line. Anytime one of them wanted to use it, their dad was we affectionately christened him the third teenager, even though he was 44 at the time. Both boys understood that it was an important part of Michael's recovery. He had to make and receive calls every night, so they just started to use their mobiles. After that, I started to notice other things. For instance, I would be told that we were going out to dinner or going away for a weekend. This was all new for me, and despite the goodwill behind these gestures, I started to feel as if my opinion didn't count anymore, and I suppose out of control. When we went out to dinner, Mike and Lee were suddenly ordering our food, and I would just sit there nodding. In agreement, all the decisions I used to make were now being made for me. Parent-teacher meetings, something Michael would have run mile from in the past, were now on his calendar. "I'll go to this one," he would say. It was the same with hurling and soccer matches. I didn't understand what was going on. When someone has a stammer, everyone believes that it only affects the stammerer, but this is untrue. Michael and I have always made a good team, and I believed I knew him from the inside out. But I have learned more about him in the past, at the time it was 7 years, it's now 12, than I did in the previous 22 years of marriage. Luckily, it has only made us stronger. But back in '99, I wasn't thinking those things when I was losing my purpose. When I finally got to meet some of the other people who were on the programme with him and understand that the programme was about, things changed. It was only when I got to know them and their partners that I realised I wasn't alone with these feelings. Others had gone through the same feelings of redundancy as I had. I finally understand that I wasn't being frozen out, but it was what each and every person has to complete, who completes the programme has to do in order to achieve successful recovery. They have to make the phone calls because the phone holds such a great fear for all of them. The same applies during street contacts and support meetings. When I saw that the programme was working for Michael, I decided to get to know some of the other people involved. It was one of the best decisions I ever made, and I have met some lovely people over the years and have made some brilliant friends. Do I still mind being made redundancy? Not one bit. I would do it all willingly again tomorrow. I am so proud of what Michael has achieved, and I know that our sons, Gary and Alan, are also in awe of this wonderful man, their dad. If you have a partner who stammers, get involved in their recovery. It is the only way to combat the demons that made you feel isolated, left out or left behind.
Okay, so it doesn't only affect the person who is challenged by stammering. There's a whole emotional charge around people who are challenged by stammering. Right, we spoke about triggers, and I need to really speed this up. The reality was I stuttered. No hiding it, I stuttered. The reality, feelings of shame, which is one of the major emotions, negative emotions of any human being, which leads to the reality of feeling different. I felt different. In every other aspect of my life, business, whatever I needed to achieve, I achieved it. But verbal communication was different. The reality of feelings of rejection. Love is a powerful feeling. Rejection is the opposite of love. And I saw rejection in people's faces, and I felt that. The reality, feelings of isolation. We talked about, or David talked about feelings yesterday. Look at all of those feelings. Do you have them? Feelings of isolation, how I isolated myself away from the world. How I ingrained my self-belief system that I was not worthy to take part in verbal communication in that big world. How I limited myself by those feelings. Are you doing that? Is the question. The reality, feelings of not being my authentic self. What you see in front of you now is the authentic Michael O'Shea. And you know exactly what I mean. Creator, thoughts, perceptions. I created my own negative label. The label of stammering. The label I created for myself. Stammering person. Even on the loo, I saw my stammer. It took me many, many years into adulthood to change that to person who stammers. Just look at the change. Look at the label. Are you putting that label on yourself? Creating negative perceptions. We all know what that is. Creating a negative blueprint for myself as a verbal communicator. Never saw beyond stammering. Creating anticipatory anxiety. A prime example of anticipatory anxiety with me was, listen to how unreal that this would be for a normal speaker. Our son Gary is 4 years old. 4 years old. I couldn't say his name when he was born. And should block up the back of the throat. 4 hours old, sorry, Monica, 4 hours old, and I was thinking of his wedding speech 24 years later, anticipatory anxiety. You can understand that. Explain that to a normal speaker. They said, oh, I lost my rocker. How could you think of that at 4 years? But that was my reality. Okay, I'm going to wrap this. Creating a state of approval. Okay? How many of us out there lived to satisfy the approval of others? How many of us overcompensated to be accepted? I overcompensated just to be accepted as normal. I overcompensated in athletics, in business, to be accepted as normal. Creating a state of confinement, confining myself in my world. State of confinement. Can anybody tell me a recent state of confinement that they saw on the TV? Look at the King's speech. Look at how Loeb created the state of confinement, or the safe house, as David said, for the king to make his speech. No distractions. Safe house. Nobody there, only him. How many times in my life did I create my safe house? How many times in your life are you still doing it? If you don't go after what you want, you will never get it. Years of searching, new knowledge, application of that knowledge, and support in that application. Competence, trust, and support. Quick one about John Harrison. 2 years into the McGuire program, I became stuck in my recovery. I wasn't moving forward, I wasn't moving back, and I was getting the same information within the McGuire program. The same information from all the coaches, because they hadn't looked beyond what they knew. I rang John Harrison one night and I explained it to him, and I'll make this quick. And John said to me, Michael, unless you let go and trust yourself to speak without your tools and techniques, you will never reach freedom. It was like getting a slap across the head with a hammer, because I never heard that before. That's all he said. And within 3 kilometres of our home, there's a long beach, and I walked that beach every day for 3 days trying to figure out what he said. Or figure it out. What does that mean? And for the next 6 months I tried, and I moved beyond technique. I trusted myself to speak in all situations, and within 6 months I was basically where I am now, and it got better and better. So trust yourself. Competence leads to confidence. I became confident with the technique, which led to confidence. Healing. I haven't time to go into it now, but there is healing along the way, psychological healing. Sharing. We're here today, we're sharing. Be your authentic self, trust yourself. You have the resources, listen and learn. I learned the power of listening. Knowledge is power. Application is powerful. Knowledge is power. Application is powerful. You need to find your own way out. There is a way out, but you need to search and you need to find it. Be yourself. Contact details. Bill Perry, it's 2 minutes to 10. You're still here. Okay, thank you very much.